Hi everyone, I'm Kayla. This is my kitchen. Welcome. I'm a third year human nutrition student at St. Francis Xavier University in Nova Scotia. But with the whole pandemic that's happening right now, I'm home and maybe like you, I'm cooking a lot more than I typically would. And I found a really great recipe that I thought I would share with you. So I hope that maybe it inspires you to either try some new ingredients or start cooking a little bit more often and learning something new. So let's get started. So the recipe that we're going to be making today is from this cookbook. It's called Yum and Yummier. Ridiculously tasty recipes that'll blow your mind but not your diet. So I was gifted this cookbook for my birthday back in April, and it's quite well loved. I've just put a lot of sticky notes in the recipes that I have made or want to make. But the one that we're going to be making today is one that I've made I think 3 or 4 times now, and I've shared with friends and family and they've really enjoyed it. And what it is a roasted sweet potato and white bean dip. So here is what it should look like at the end if everything goes well. It will. It's very simple, easy. And I will include a screenshot of these ingredients and instructions so that you can go back to them if you ever want to make it in the future. So the first major ingredient is one of my favorites, sweet potato. And I love sweet potatoes because they're really easy. They're full of fiber, minerals, nutrients, and in particular they actually have a few antioxidants in them. One of them is a group of antioxidants called anthocyanins, and those may have a protective effect against some chronic disease. They also have beta carotenes in them, which gives it the really nice orange color. And beta carotenes are really good for maintaining eye health and preventing vision loss. So that's our first main ingredient, one of these guys. Second up, we have a good old can of beans. So for us here, we're not going grocery shopping all that often anymore with the whole COVID situation. So I have a lot of canned beans stocked up. And so I'm just looking for different ways to use them. And I actually really love them because they are also full of vitamins, minerals, fibers, all of that good stuff. And I love them because they're relatively cheap. They store a long time in your pantry, and they provide a really good source of protein that will keep you feeling full for longer. And so this combination should result in a really delicious dip. Breaking news from my living room in my boyfriend's suit. Did you know that Canada is one of the world's largest exporter of beans? Health Canada recommends choosing beans more often. Now back to you, Kayla. Thanks, news anchor Kayla, for that cheesy bit of information that we didn't even know we needed. Now let's get on to finding out what the ingredients are going to be. 1 large sweet potato, some extra virgin olive oil, 1 can 540 milliliters of beans. This can be navy beans, and you can also try it with white kidney beans or chickpeas. 1 lemon or some lemon juice, a few cloves of garlic, cumin and some ground red cayenne pepper. That can be adjusted so it's not too spicy. A little bit of maple syrup. You can also use honey or sugar or another sweetener of your choice. Tahini. This is maybe the most exotic ingredient. What it is crushed, roasted sesame seeds made into a paste. So I just got this one from Superstore, and it has the consistency of a peanut butter. So it adds a really nice creamy flavor, but the recipe suggests that you can also use sunflower seed butter instead. A sprinkle of salt and pepper. The first thing I'm going to do is preheat my oven, and I'm going to set it for 425. So I'm just going to start with peeling off 2 cloves of garlic. The recipe calls for 2, but I'm actually going to put in 3 because we prefer a little bit more garlic, and these are pretty small cloves, so. So I got my 3 cloves of garlic, and I've got the little garlic pieces all over my counter, as you do with garlic. And what I'm gonna do with these, I'm just gonna cut off the ends. Ends on both sides. And that'll let me peel them pretty easily. One trick with garlic is this clove I can't get the skin off very easily. So what I'm gonna do is just gonna put it under the flat side of my knife, and I'm just gonna crush it a little bit with my palm. So I'm just pressing straight down with it, and that crushes the clove like just enough that it loosens the skin. Ta-da! So now you should have your 3 cloves of garlic with all of the skin taken off. The next thing that we need to do is peel the sweet potato. So I just have a peeler, the sweet potato, and then I just took out a liquid measuring cup for 2 cups. This recipe is not so specific that you need to make sure that you have exactly 2 cups. What we need is 2 cups of diced peeled sweet potato. So I just like to throw them in here as I go once I peel it and cut it. I've peeled the sweet potato, but part of it I couldn't get at with the peeler, just with the way that it's shaped. So when I go over it with the peeler, it's not catching any of the skin. And so what I'm gonna do is go ahead and pretend that that doesn't exist and just continue cutting it up. And then the pieces that get the peel on it, I'll peel them off after I chop it up. I think one of the best parts of this recipe is that it doesn't matter how you cut them up really, just if you want to try and keep them about the same size so that they roast evenly, that would be the most specific part to this recipe. But other than that, I just have all different kinds of shapes and sizes really in here. Eventually we're going to be blending it up anyways, so the size and shape and look to it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna put my 3 cloves of garlic, one of them almost fell on the floor, 3 cloves of garlic right into the bowl with my 2 cups of diced sweet potatoes that I just cut up. And then a tablespoon of olive oil, just enough that it's gonna coat all the potatoes and the garlic so that they roast nice and evenly. And just give it a mix. You'll know if there's not enough oil, you can just go back and add some. But if you prefer to measure and cook like that, it'd be 1 tablespoon of olive oil. All right, so once they're all coated in oil, I've just prepared a baking sheet here, lined it with parchment paper or tin foil. And I'm just gonna lay these out here on the baking sheet. And giving them enough space, as much space between them as possible, that will allow them to roast more evenly. That's a little trick I've heard. If they are crowded too much, too close together, they're just gonna steam, so they're not gonna get that crispy caramelization happening. So give them as much room as possible, spread them out as much as you can. And then we're gonna get put into the oven. We're gonna set a timer. These stay in for 20 minutes and you're gonna wanna bump them around about 10 minutes just so that they're not getting too toasty on one side. Next up, I'm going to drain the can of beans, rinse and drain them just into a colander in the sink. And it is actually important to rinse the beans because as you can see on this one, they do add some sodium, so it's good to get rid of a little bit of that additional salt, and then you can add back in the amounts of salt that you want. And magically it's opened. So as you can see, the canned beans come in some liquid, which is usually just water and some salt and maybe some preservatives. And I'm just gonna pour it over a colander. I find that to be the easiest thing. Take some cold water and rinse it over the beans, just getting off all that extra salt. I'm gonna just take it over, and what I've gotten out here is just my blender. So into the blender, I'm gonna put this whole thing of beans. So from here, basically we add all of the other ingredients in the ingredient list into this blender. So I have them all laid out here, and we'll start adding. So here I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of this tahini. It's the sesame paste. So I actually found this tahini in the international aisle at Superstore. That's where I generally can find it, and sometimes it's hidden away in an alternative spice section. So if you're looking for it at the grocery store, if you're interested in trying it, sometimes it's a little bit tricky to find. But 3 tablespoons of that, or your sunflower seed butter, as I mentioned earlier. Next up is 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. So I just have my lemon here. I'm going to take the sticker off and wash it quickly. And what I'm going to do with it is I'm just going to cut it right in half. And cut it in half again. And so now I've just taken out a small little bowl, and I like to juice my lemons just into this small little bowl if I need a specific measurement. So this recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. So I'm just gonna juice as much lemon juice as I can out of these 2 halves, and then I will cut and juice more if I need more. I'm not sure how much of this lemon it will take to make 3 tablespoons, so let's see. Lemon's also great for getting rid of the smell of garlic off your fingers after you've been peeling it, so that's a benefit of doing this afterwards as well. I'm just gonna pull out the seeds that have made their way into the juice. I have this much here, and I don't think that's gonna be quite enough, so I'm just gonna cut 1 more piece. And using that same tablespoon, I'm going to try and get 3 of those into our mixture. Next up is 1 teaspoon of maple syrup or sweetener of your choice. So mine is this huge bottle of maple syrup. And then we're going to put half a teaspoon of cumin. Half a teaspoon cumin. It's that Indian-y flavor. And then my salt and pepper. Half a teaspoon of salt. A 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. And a pinch of cayenne. This is what you can leave out if you don't want that little bit of heat. I think I'm gonna add it in today because I really liked it the last time that we put it in. And because there's so much beans and sweet potato, the little 1/8 of the teaspoon that the recipe calls for, we didn't really barely notice, so I'm gonna add that in. My oven has just beeped at me to tell me that the sweet potatoes are done. So let's take them out. They're looking pretty good. Just gonna bring them over here. So they're nice and crisped up now. You can see the edges are starting to turn a little bit brown, which we like. This we're also going to add into the blender with a tablespoon of olive oil. Okay, now we're finally ready to blend. So I would suggest waiting, I don't know, 5 to 7 minutes just to let your sweet potatoes cool down. Generally, you don't want to blend anything too hot. But what we're just going to do is just going to pulse it, acting like a food processor. So if you have a food processor, it might be a little bit easier to do than in a blender, but I'm just going to use the pulse function, or just keep pressing it, to slowly incorporate things. And I've just gotten a little glass of water here prepared so that I can thin out the consistency if it's not blending well. So don't worry, I'll put some good music on now so you don't have to listen to blender noises. From here, I am going to put this in a container, like a Tupperware container, and chill it in the fridge for 3 hours. You can try it when it's still warm, but it's really good if you let it just sit and let all the flavors meld together in the fridge for about 3 hours, or even overnight. So mine I had to add quite a lot of water to. Generally, I probably added maybe a 1/4 cup altogether, but it can be just to your preference. So we like to eat this dip with crackers or cucumber rounds, sliced carrots, pita chips, just by the spoonful. And so I like mine to be more of like a thick dip, but I just had to keep adding water because it wasn't blending as well as it needed to be. So you can play around with it, and you'll know once you make it the first time. It's kind of hard to mess up. It's not really something that you can over blend. So I'm just gonna finish putting this in my Tupperware and then putting it in the fridge, and then trying to be patient to wait 3 hours to eat it. Future Kayla here. So I let the dip sit in the fridge overnight, and then I've just chopped up a bunch of different veggies and added some crackers and added a little bit of olive oil to the top of the dip, put some cilantro pieces, sprinkled it with some extra spices just for the look. But now we can enjoy for lunch. I hope you enjoyed watching. Let's see how well I can do this with one hand. Maybe not at all. And Health Canada recommends choosing beans more often. Now back to you, Kat.